Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Guetta, I just handed you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 477. Can you open that package? Do you recognize it first?
Yes, I do.
Is it in the same condition that you, when you received it, as far as markings?
Yes.
And what's the marking on the package say?
There's some text on there that says C1 pistol magazine, 9mm, with approximate 5 cartridges collected from Chevy Impala. And there's, I guess, a case number 15-23-3-0110, and then the date of 5/26/15 has my identifiers on it, and then another number 15003753.
Okay, and that is in the same condition as after you examined the contents?
Yes.
Okay, can you open it, please? Does State's Exhibit 477 correspond to the item that you listed, or is listed on your report as C1?
Yes.
Okay. Now, initially, when you first started your examination of the evidence that you received, did you happen to look at C1, and what did you do with C1?
I examined C1. I placed my identifiers on the actual magazine. There were also some cartridges that were included with the magazine.
What type of cartridges are there?
They are Remington brand 9mm Luger, what I recognize as Golden Saber, their model of ammunition.
And are they hollow point, or are they the other type of?
They are hollow points.
Okay. Now, what did you do with that magazine?
This magazine I used for the majority, if not all, of my test firing with the pistol.
Okay. Now, initially, at this point, when you placed that magazine in the pistol, and you were test firing, was there anything that occurred or didn't occur? Ejections, things of that nature?
This magazine, like I said, I used for the majority of my test firing. On occasion, a cartridge case would fail to eject out of this pistol using this magazine. It just happened randomly. When we did some further testing later on for doing the distance test and ejection pattern test, we used some different ammunition, some federal ammunition, and this pistol just would not extract or eject those cartridge cases. Every one virtually jammed inside of it using federal ammunition.
So what type of ammunition did you use?
Well, again, for that initial test, I was using that, or not initial test, for that portion of the test when I was using the federal, it was jamming. Then we switched back to the Remington ammunition, and it worked more normally.
Okay. Now, if you could put those back into State's Exhibit 477's package. Mr. Guetta, I apologize. Now, looking at State's Exhibit 474, it appears that there are boxes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 330. Is this the same? Is this a picture of the same package that you're looking at?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And this is your photograph. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated initially that you photograph everything. Let me show you State's Exhibit 331. Did you photograph the package of, State's Exhibit 474?
Yes,
Okay.
the containers.
And what did the containers, there was 5. Now, you looked at casings, is that correct? There were casings inside of that?
There were 4 cartridge casings and 1 cartridge.
Okay. Now the 4 cartridge casings, again, what type of casings were they?
They were Remington brand 9mm Luger.
Okay. Now, let me show you State's Exhibit 332, 333, 334, and 335. Would this be a picture of what contains in G2?
Yes.
Okay. .333, what contains in G3?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's some markings here on the casing itself. Are those your markings?
No, they're not.
Okay. The G4 is on 334, State Exhibit. Is that your photograph?
Yes.
Okay. And on 335, is that casing on for G5?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll get to the AR1 later, in a minute. Did you test and examine the casings in comparison to the Beretta 9mm handgun?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what conclusions did you reach as a result of your examination?
That those 4 cartridge cases, G2 through G5, were identified as having been fired by this 9mm pistol.
And is your conclusion within the bounds of reasonable scientific certainty or practical certainty?
With practical certainty.
And why practical certainty?
What that means is that it's impossible for me to examine every firearm ever made, all the ones in the world. But looking at these items here and looking at the characteristics that I was making my association with, I feel that, based on my training and experience, that this firearm fired these cartridge cases. But I can't say with absolute certainty. May there be another one out there? I don't believe so, but that's why we say that.
Now, what did you find that made that conclusion, to base your conclusion on?
The main thing, like I stated, I believe earlier, that caught my attention was the firing pin impression. In particular, a small little raised portion in the firing pin impression. And then once I looked at the firearm and the firing pin on the pistol, I saw that dent or that little defect in the tip of the firing pin. And that's what I associated that mark with.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and open at G2? I just...
Okay?
Okay. Is that the cartridge that you examined?
Yes, it is.
Can you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you were talking about as far as what the identifier to make it?
Well, it's very small,
Okay.
so if I could use...
Yeah, sure. If you can you step down?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And you can tell us about it right here. Oh, maybe it's a little too much.
I don't believe we're going to be able to see that mark there.
Yeah.
I don't believe we're going to be able to see. I use, again, a microscope to look at this.
Okay. But this is the top that you're looking at.
Yes, the head of the cartridge case, that's correct. And you can see the firing pin impression itself.
Okay. And it matched up with the pistol, the 9mm.
The test fire cartridge cases that I used, that I fired at, it did.
Okay. You can sit down. If you could just take that back. If I can have 478. Thank you. Now, I'm going to hand you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 478. If you can take a look at both sides of the box and determine if that's the same that you had, you examined back on August 17th, or about August 17th of 2015.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And can you open that box also? Well, first of all, what is the box, is it in the same condition as when you received it? Same
Yes, it is.
What was on the box at that point?
There's a lot of text on here again. 9mm Luger R-P cartridge, hollow point, collected from Dodge Durango. There's that case number again, 15-23-3-0110, and the date of 5/27/15. And it has my identifiers also on the box.
And State's Exhibit 478, does it correspond to your item examined D1?
Yes.
Okay. Can you open it, please?
You bet.
And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the type of cartridge it is, the name brand, and the caliber?
It is a Remington brand 9mm Luger cartridge.
If you can show it to them.
Remington brand 9mm Luger caliber cartridge. Also a Golden Saber brand or model.
Okay. Now, did you do any testing on or examination on State's Exhibit 478?
Yes, I did.
And what were your conclusions?
What I was trying to determine to see if this cartridge, my item D1, the State's Exhibit 478, was in fact cycled through the action of that 9mm pistol. You saw me demonstrate how I could load cartridges into the magazine and then manually cycle a cartridge through the action, if you will, of the firearm. When you do that, the hard metal parts are going to mark that cartridge case and or the bullet. And sometimes you can try to look at those marks and try to use those marks to link it back to the firearm that cycled it.
And did you come up with any conclusions on when you were looking at it?
My result was I could neither identify it or eliminate it as having been cycled through that action. So I couldn't make an identification that it was in fact cycled through there, but I couldn't eliminate it either.
Okay. Is that common or uncommon to have that type of cartridge that you can't? What would cause that? Let me ask you that, in your opinion.
We're looking at parts like the extractor, the ejector, that come in contact with that cartridge case. They're smaller parts. Sometimes they may mark sufficiently for me to make that association, and sometimes they may not. In this case, there wasn't sufficient agreement of that mark to make that association.
Okay. Now, if you can put that back, and I can have it in there?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just, so I don't get confused here, thank you. And if I could have the G, and I think
The cartridge cases?
Yeah.
They're here, and that cartridge.
Okay. I'll just make sure that, okay. Now, did you have occasion, Mr. Guetta, to look at items that you marked as 23, 24, 25, and 27?
Yes.
Okay. Let me hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 488 for identification. May I approach, Your Honor? Real quick. I just want to make sure that I got all of it. Okay, good. Okay, is that the package that you received?
Yes.
Okay. And can you open the package at this point? Okay. And they're individual packages, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to look at what has been marked as number 23. Is it there?
Yes.
What is it, the package indicate that it is? If it has.
The package, the indication on the package, there's a label on there from the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator, the name of Greg A. Benner, as a date of birth, date of death, missile from right anterior shoulder at 140.2 GN stands for grains.
Okay. And did you have occasion to make a comparison on that particular item? Well, if you could open it, please.
I use some gloves
Okay,
at this
yeah.
point.
And if you can show item 23, what is it? States Exhibit 488. Can you please? Okay. Why don't you get up here and kind of?
Okay.
Now, did you make a comparison to the gun, the pistol, the 9mm Beretta?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion to a reasonable practical certainty?
That this bullet was fired by that 9mm pistol.
Thank you, if you can take that. And what type of jacket is it?
It is a brass jacketing. It appears to be a hollow point style bullet.
Okay. Is it any type of, would it be considered the caliber?
I determined it was consistent with 9mm.
And is it a Luger or other type?
I believe I said 9mm. Excuse me. It's just 9mm Luger. That's correct.
Now, if you could open number 24. And before you open it, what does it say on the writing on it?
Again, another label from the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator. Again, Greg A. Benner, date of birth and a date of death. A missile fragment from right lateral chest, soft tissue, approximately 36.8 grains.
Okay, you can open it.
Going to approach.
Okay. And did you make a comparison to the 9mm Beretta with that jacket?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion to a reasonable practical certainty?
That this bullet was fired by that 9mm pistol.
Okay, you take that. Now, and again, what type of caliber and make, I guess, or did you determine? If you may have to
Okay.
look at your notes.
Just something, this is just the jacketing portion also. There's no center, there's no core in this. It's just a jacket.
And you listed it as a,
Consistent with being 9mm Luger.
okay. Now, Mr. Guetta, it appears that it's opened up. The jacket is, as you explained earlier, that the jacket covers the metal or the projectile, I guess I don't know if that's the term you would use. You can correct me. I probably have it wrong, but it's opened up. What has happened?
It covers the core. The
Core.
core is the lead portion of it that's in the middle, and the jacketing is on top. It has mushroomed out, flattened out.
Okay, is that consistent with a hollow point? Is it possible a hollow point?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, if you could look at number 25, and what does it indicate there?
Again, the label says New Mexico Offices of the Medical Investigator, Greg A. Benner, date of birth and date of death. Missile fragments from right anterior shoulder, soft tissue, approximately 1.6 grains.
Okay. Now, number 23 indicated right anterior shoulder. That was the jacket, correct?
Oh, 23. 23 was the entire bullet, jacket and core.
Okay. Now, what are these fragments? I mean, if you can open up and look at.
If I could suggest that they're very, very small.
Okay, why don't you, not open them up at this point. Maybe I have it. Well, what are we talking about?
We're talking about very small, apparent lead fragments, very tiny lead fragments.
Let me, I got a picture here, I think. Let me show you State's Exhibit 344. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you make a comparison of these fragments or any type of comparison?
They were unsuitable for any comparison purposes.
Okay. And why would they be unsuitable?
They are just small little fragments. There was no rifling markings on them at all. This is very small.
Okay. If you can look at number 27. I'm not going to have you open those ones, but if you can indicate the writing.
Okay, again, another label from the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator. Greg A. Benner, date of birth and date of death. Missile fragment from right lateral chest, soft tissue, approximately 109.6 grains.
Okay. And let me show you, this was 27. Let me see if I have 27 here. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And did you make a comparison to the 9mm Beretta?
I examined it, but I determined that it is the core of a jacketed bullet. So since it's the core, the rifling in the interior of the barrel is not going to come in contact with the core, so there's no markings for me to make an association with. However, it was consistent with being the core of a hollow point style bullet.
Okay. Now, I think I missed a gun. On number 24, the fired brass bullet jacket, mushroom, did you make a comparison to that weapon?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion to a reasonable practical certainty?
That bullet was in fact fired by that pistol.
Okay. Now, you look at G28, and I don't know if we have. Okay, you have G28?
Yes.
I'm sorry. And what does the back indicate, G28?
The package on the outside of the box, there's a lot of information. Case number 15-23-3-0110. It has the case agent, I guess Rio Rancho PD Rodney Montoya. Offense, officer involved, shooting investigation. Suspect Andrew Romero. Victim, Rio Rancho police officer Gregory Benner. Item, quantity, 1. Description, a projectile.
Okay. And so if you can open that also, I'm just.
Okay.
If you can show
Oh,
it to the.
sorry.
Yeah, if you. Okay. And did you make a test in comparison to the pistol, the 9mm Beretta?
Yes, I did.
And did you come to a conclusion to a reasonable practical certainty?
Yes, this bullet was fired by that pistol.
Okay, you can take that back. Now, I'm going to hand you, you can put that back in, 480. Exhibit 480.
I don't.
Yeah, there it is. Let me hand you what's been admitted as 480, State's Exhibit. Can you indicate the right on the package right there?
It's an evidence bag. It says agency RRPD, Rio Rancho Police Department, item number 044, case number 15003753, date and time of collection 5/28/15 at 10:22 a.m. Collected by G. Herrera, I guess his ID number B821. Description and or location of evidence: projectile pulled from right foot of Tabitha Littles. Then it has suspect Tabitha Littles, victim G. Benner. That's it.
Okay. If you could open that up, Mr. Forty. And can you show it to the,
You want me to take it out of all
no,
this?
just,
Okay.
what is it? A bottle containing,
There is a, what appears to be a specimen bottle with a label on it. Would you like me to read the label?
just very briefly.
Just Tabitha Littles, bullet, right foot. And inside this plastic container, there is a fired bullet.
Okay. Did you make a comparison, when you talk about a bullet, what are we talking about?
I'm talking about this portion, the fired bullet, the whole entire bullet.
Okay. And did you make a comparison on that bullet to the 9mm Beretta?
Yes, I did.
And did you come, do you have a conclusion as to up to a practical certainty?
Yes, that bullet was fired by that pistol.
Okay. Look,
This is the first hole, what I label as number 1, and it's approximate.
come your conclusion.
To me, that looked like that bullet struck an object. It was most likely a ricochet. You hit an object and skidded off the side of the bullet.
Okay. Exhibit 480.
I don't.
Yeah, there it is. Let me hand you what's been admitted as 480, State's Exhibit. Can you indicate the right on the package right there?
It's an evidence bag. It says Agency RRPD, Rio Rancho Police Department, item number 044, case number 15003753, date and time of collection 5/28/15 at 10:22 a.m. Collected by G. Herrera. I guess his ID number B821. Description and or location of evidence: projectile pulled from right foot of Tabitha Littles. Then it has suspect Tabitha Littles, victim G. Benner. That's it.
Okay. If you could open that up, Mr. Forty. And can you show it to the?
You want me to take it out of all
No,
this?
no, no. Just what is it? A bottle containing.
There is a, what appears to be a specimen bottle with a label on it. Would you like me to read the label?
Just very briefly.
Just Tabitha Littles, bullet, right foot. And inside this plastic container, there is a fired bullet.
Okay. Did you make a comparison? When you talk about a bullet, what are we talking about?
I'm talking about this portion, the fired bullet, the whole entire bullet.
Okay. And did you make a comparison on that bullet to the 9mm Beretta?
Yes, I did.
And did you come? Do you have a conclusion as to up to a practical certainty?
Yes, that bullet was fired by that pistol.
Okay. Looking again at item 25 and 27, the 25, the lead fragments, and 27, the fired lead core. Were you able to determine what type of jacket it consists of on your report?
Type of jacket?
Well, did you make a comparison? You indicated it was unsuitable for comparison. Is that correct?
Both items, yes.
Okay. Is it consistent with the core of a particular type of bullet?
Yes, I believe that's consistent with being a core of a hollow point style bullet, correct.
Okay, on your continuing with your testing, Mr. Guetta, you looked at item 12. What is item 12?
Item is 12 is a pair of uniform style pants.
Okay, let me hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 489. Okay, did you examine those?
Yes, I did.
And what did you determine upon examination regarding the pants?
What I was able to find in the right leg, the right lower leg, I found what appeared to be a bullet hole on the outside of the leg and also another hole on the inside of the leg.
Okay, and when you're talking about, where was the hole on the outside of the leg? What leg are we talking about and approximately where?
The right leg, approximately
if you could stand up and kind of show, I'm not going to take the pants off. Take the pants out.
I have a drawing of it.
Okay, if you have the drawing.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Okay. And if you want to zoom it in, just
This is
use this.
This is looking at the rear portion of the pants. The legs were cut open on the pants. So this is the first hole, what I've labeled as number 1, and it's approximately in this location, approximately here around near the right knee, outside the right knee. And hole 2 is on the inside portion of the pant leg, on their right leg,
Okay.
right in this location.
Were you able to determine at what, if hole 1 or hole 2 was an exit or entry? Were you able to determine that?
When I examined,
Yeah, go ahead.
when I examine the holes, there's some characteristics that I'm looking for to determine if the holes were in fact created by the passage of a bullet. In this case, I'm looking at the hole number 1, the one on the outside of the leg first. There was some tearing of the material. It was fairly round. It appeared to have been created by the passage of a bullet. The thing that was that caught my eye on hole 2 was that the fibers of the pant leg were protruding to the outside, as if the hole went from 1 through 2, traveling from outside to inside. So that indicated to me that hole number 2 was most likely an exit hole.
Okay. So you're indicating that hole number 1 was kind of on the outside of the right, and the hole number 1 was kind of the inner part of it.
Hole 2 was on the
Okay.
inside.
Okay. All right. Real quickly, going back to State's Exhibit, the 44, the projectile that you determined to be fired that was from Tabitha Little's
Yes.
foot. State's Exhibit 352. Oops. That's a specimen bottle that you were talking about, correct? That
Yes.
you showed. Now, contained in that bottle, maybe it's a little better, I should have done this before. Is that the projectile that you had?
Yes.
Okay. And would this be a very close-up look at that projectile?
It's showing just one side of the bullet where it had impact damage on the side of the bullet.
Okay. What was significant about that impact damage? Sorry.
Well, there was a lot of abrasions or abrading scratches or scrapes on one side of the bullet. This portion of the bullet is what we call the ogive. And there was a lot of damage from here all the way down the side, and it was kind of flattened out. When I put that bullet, that portion up under a microscope, you could see small grains of either concrete or rock or some debris. Again, it looked like concrete to me, embedded in the jacketing of that bullet.
Okay. Did that give you any indication of how that occurred, or your conclusion?
To me, that looked like that bullet struck an object. It was most likely a ricochet. You hit an object and skidded off the side of the bullet.
Okay. Now, in your experience and as an expert in firearms, you feel at this point, Mr. Getter, that would it be possible for somebody to shoot themselves?
Objection, that's foundation. There's no foundation for this, no approach.
Mr. Getter, you talk about it being a ricochet. how was it flattened on one end? I mean, when you looked at it, to what determination? Bouncing off the whatever it hit?
It appeared to have struck at a hard object, most likely concrete or asphalt or something, on its side. If it would have struck nose on, all the damage would have been on the nose of the bullet. Most likely it would have flattened out and mushroomed as it struck something hard if it struck it perpendicularly. But since all the damage was on one side and there's little bits of concrete or debris embedded in the side of the bullet, it indicates that it struck something at an oblique angle, at a slight angle. How slight, I don't know.
Okay. Now, looking at item, okay, I'm going to move on to item 20 in your report. Item 20, G20 was a short sleeve uniform shirt. I believe that is State's Exhibit 475? Yeah, 475. Did I bring it out? I don't think so. What? Do you have a diagram of that shirt?
Yes.
Okay, Sandy, I'm sorry. I should have just not had you. You have your gloves on, correct?
I just took them off, but
Okay.
I can take and put them back on. If you give me another pair if you want.
Okay. Let me give you another. I think we've already opened the shirt, so.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. You can pull the shirt off. State's Exhibit 475. Did you examine State's Exhibit 475, Mr. Guerra?
Yes, I did.
And what were you looking for, or looking at?
Well, I was examining the shirt again, looking for any apparent bullet holes.
Okay. And were you able to find bullet holes?
Yes.
Or holes?
Holes.
Yeah. Okay. And where did you find these holes at?
I found one in the right shoulder. Right in this location right here.
Okay. And a second hole?
The second hole was in the upper shoulder area, what I call upper shoulder.
Okay. At some point, were you able to determine whether, well, I don't think, so you were able to determine the holes, and I'm going to get to those in a little while. Did you microscopically examine the holes on both number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 for the presence of gunpowder particles?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion?
When I was able to find on the hole number 1, the one on the outside of the leg of the pants, I found nothing. There was no visible gunpowder particles. There was no visible gunpowder particles on hole number 2. There was no visible gunpowder particles on hole number 3 or on number 4.
Okay. Did you try to determine whether there was any nitrate reaction, particle nitrate reactions to any of the holes?
Maybe I need to explain.
Yeah, okay.
Let me back up a little bit here and explain that when a gun goes off, not only does the bullet come out, but there are what we call gunshot residues, either burned, partially burned, or burning gunpowder particles that come out of the muzzle of the firearm along with the bullet. Now, they're heavier particles, and they travel out so far that they just fall to the ground. Now, when you see a gun go off, you also see some smoke sometimes. That smoke is usually made up of vaporous lead, very small microscopic particles of lead. Now, that being smoke, it doesn't travel as far. It kind of comes out and dissipates. So these articles or these items come out in a cone-shaped fashion. I have a drawing that might help.
Yes, go ahead.
If I could use it, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Okay. What this drawing shows is, as a gun goes off, you have these articles that I mentioned, the gunpowder particles. And again, you're going to get maybe even some unburned particles coming out of the muzzle of the firearm. As you increase the distance, these particles will not make it to the target. So finally, eventually, there will be a point where these particles will not reach the target material. So if the target is close enough to the muzzle, I would expect to find these gunshot residues, either the lead, the vaporous lead, or the burned or unburned particles on the clothing. So that first exam I do on clothing, I'm looking for unburned gunpowder particles. Gunpowder comes in different shapes also, the sizes. And this depends on the ammunition, it depends on what that cartridge is being used for. And the different shapes and sizes of gunpowder will affect the burning rate of gunpowder. That's why the manufacturers use it, depending on the use of that firearm. So when I do a distance test, that's why it's important to use similar ammunition that was used in the shooting incident. So that's why I will use Remington Golden Saber brand ammunition to make sure I'm using the same gunpowder. What I'll usually do is if I have ammunition from the case, I'll pull one of the cartridges apart, take the bullet out, and look at the gunpowder. And note how much it weighs, how much powder is in there, the shape of the powder, the kind of powder it is, weigh the bullet, look at all those characteristics. And then when I select my test ammunition, I'll also pull one of those bullets out, look at the gunpowder to see that it's the same or similar. So that's what I did.
Okay. Now, were you able to determine from that at some point? I'm going to continue with the holes in the pants, States Exhibit 365. Were you able to determine, in your expertise, the muzzle to garment distance from the muzzle of the 9mm or the weapon to the distance of hole 1, which you've indicated is possibly an entry wound?
What I do is to try to determine that is I'll take the suspect firearm and I'll get that ammunition, make sure it's similar to what was used in the incident, and I'll test fire it at different ranges. In this case, I started at 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and I went out to eventually 8 feet to see what kind of residues, what kind of pattern it's going to leave on test cloth. In this case, I used not only cotton, which is our normal test material, but I had some uniform material also that I used that was 100% polyester, similar to the clothing, that I test fired into too. So I test fire all those shots, and I test fired 4 shots at each distance and get those known patterns at those known distances. There are chemical tests that I do, and I did in this case because we were talking about, since I did not see any gunpowder particles, now I want to try to find the burned gunpowder particles. So there's a chemical test that I do to try to locate those particles on the clothing.
Okay, and go ahead.
So what I do in this case, I have a piece of photographic paper that's sensitive to what we call nitrites. And a nitrite is a burned gunpowder particle. Prior to being burned, they're called a nitrate. So when they burn, again, they'll leave a little bit of residue when they strike the clothing if they're close enough. So I'll take this piece of photographic paper that's sensitive to these nitrites and process the garment, what I feel is the entrance hole, and process it. After I get done processing, wherever there's an orange dot on my test material, and I'll locate the bullet hole in probably the center of the test material so I can kind of try to get a pattern. Wherever there's an orange dot, that indicates that's a burned gunpowder particle, or a nitrite. So I try to develop that pattern, and that's what I did in this case on hole number 1. I also did the test on hole number 2. Hole number 1, I did get some nitrite reactions. I think approximately 14 nitrite reactions, little specks of orange dot on my test material surrounding the bullet hole. On hole number 2, I got nothing, which also supported why hole number 2 is most likely the exit, because the particles can't go through the material and get around to the backside of the exit hole, so you're not going to find them there. So I found those on hole number 1, the one in the leg.
Okay. When you talk about hole number 2, this right here, this is basically when you're saying it's an exit, it's because of the protrusion of outward of the garment. Is that correct?
Of the fibers pushing out. I also examined or looked at the medical examiner's report to help confirm what I was seeing also.
Okay. Now, in hole number 1, were you able to determine the muzzle to garment distance for hole number 1?
After all my testing and processing all these test materials, these test shots, I came up with a distance, and we bracket our distance because we can't get it exactly. It was exactly, as an example, 1 foot 3.2 inches. So I bracketed it. In this case, I said it was greater than 2 feet, but less than 6 feet. So it's in there somewhere, and that's the best I can come up with.
Okay. Did you do that also for hole number 3 and 4?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just show you States Exhibit 372. Again, the shirt here. Let me just. This thing is so bad. Let me see if I can get it better resolution. It's hard to read. This thing is not. Hole number 3 being here, and hole number 4 being here.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you do the same type of test that you just described on hole number